It's appropriate for tonight because we are talking about, yeah, we're live. It's 8 o'clock. I'm late. Wrong cam because we're talking about Hemi cams tonight. The guys from Brian Tooley Racing have Hemi cams out now. And I like the fact that they're taking a lot of their information and data that they've gathered through lots and lots of extensive testing on the LS and the LT, and are applying what they've learned on the Hemi, and also taking stuff from the Hemi and then applying it, because you find out different things. The more testing that you do, the more information you have, the more you find out things, and the more you then can apply it to other things, and then their products just get better, which is why they're continually evolving with their products. And I think that that's a great idea. But on the Hemi side, it's very, very cool. For a couple of reasons. One is, if you take a look at, naturally people will compare the Hemis to the LS market because the LS is the big industry right now. It's the darling, I guess. But we see that, for the LS market, there are a gazillion different cams. From Brian Tooley Racing has a bunch of their own stuff. Their most famous of which obviously is the Truck Norris cam. So it's not surprising that they have applied the Truck Norris name to a camshaft for the Hemi. So for their Hemi offerings, naturally they would want to make a Truck Norris cam, but didn't want to do that unless they had a cam that was, suitably powerful. It has to be, if you're going to be Truck Norris, you have to be able to deliver the goods. And according to their data, I haven't run one yet because I don't have a 5.7 to run it on. But according to their data, they did months and months of testing on when they had the 5.7. They're getting ready. I think I'm going to go back when they're going to do some 6.4 testing, which would be cool. But they did a lot of 5.7 testing, and again, it's parallel to the LS. The 5.7 is the bread and butter motor for most of the trucks. They're going to sell way more of those than they do the bigger, more powerful motors. The same thing with the LS family. 4.8s and 5.3s, lots and lots of those. 6.0s, not as much. 6.2s, even fewer. Anything that came in a car, like a Camaro or a Mustang, or not a Mustang, but a Camaro or a Corvette, you don't find any of those. But the truck stuff, you find a lot of. So on the truck offerings, the interesting thing on the Dodge side, as far as the Truck Norris Hemi cam is concerned, is that it's bigger already than the 4.8 and the 5.3 stuff on the LS side, and bigger than the 5.3 on the LT side, which is more directly now its competitor. So it's a bigger motor. It's more LS1 size, if you will. So being a 5.7, the nice thing is you can get away with, effectively more cam timing before you having to start worrying about, converter usage and idle quality and that kind of thing. So you can make the cam, a Truck Norris on a 5.7 is going to be even better than it would be on a 5.3 or a 4.8. And the cool thing about the Dodge is that it's a variable cam motor, or VVT, and it's also a dual runner intake manifold. So it's kind of cool. So it has the ability to have a very, very broad curve, which I like, because the only thing better than seeing a power curve is seeing another power curve where this power curve has improved. So we like that. So in the case of the Truck Norris cam in Brian Tooley's testing, in their Brian Tooley Racing's testing, they were able to pick up a lot of power. I mean, they picked up, 68 horsepower and almost 20 foot-pounds. And basically, at least according to the data that they're showing, the test results that they're showing, even down at 2,000, yes, at 2,000 RPM, they were loading the motor down there. The camshaft was as good or better than the stock one. So, kind of power everywhere is what they're showing, which is cool. And a little bit, if nothing else, maybe a little more tricky to do, being that it's a variable cam motor. So you have to make the camshaft, and then you have to be able to swing the camshaft, and it still has to work in its advanced and retarded forms. And they obviously spent a lot of time making that work. So they brought when they did the testing, that motor made 421 horsepower stock, the way that they run it. Probably with headers and stuff on it, the way that we do. And then jumped up to 489 horsepower. So pretty good. They also have cams that they offer because they've naturally they have a whole listing of different cams that they've tried. And the biggest one, at least the one that I saw the information on, they have a stage 4 that pushes it over 500 horsepower, so 512 horsepower. So it's quite a bit. Now naturally with a 512 horsepower combination, you're at the point where you're starting to trade things. Even with variable cam, the cam is big enough to where you're starting to trade stuff. And I didn't look and see it, and it might be that has a VVT limiter certainly, and maybe a lock on it. I don't know how big that specific camshaft is. I was more interested in the smaller version, kind of, because I think for truck guys, they probably would be more likely to put that kind of cam in. If the truck Norris sales for LS stuff is any indication, or the even the smaller truck cams for that matter, you sell a lot more smaller, milder cams than you do big racy cams. And I think that in most cases, people would be happier being undercammed than they are overcammed. Overcammed is not fun, stepping on the throttle. It could be fun at the top, but where they spend the vast majority of their time. Whereas if it's good and responsive and works well down low and in the middle part of the curve, that's where you're using it a lot and that's where you're enjoying it. And if you lost 10 horsepower at the top, you might not know that unless you take it to the track or take it to the dyno, or Richard tests it and shows you that it does that, and then people can complain about it. But the thing that I like about this, and this is something I was asking for years and years ago, back when I wrote my Hemi book, when I first started testing, and I got I think it was an 06 57. We ran it on the dyno, and what I asked for is, can you make a camshaft that's an LS camshaft for this? Because this Hemi is going to be like an LS. It has really good cylinder heads, it has a good intake manifold. It's going to respond the same way. Obviously, it has a little different combustion chamber and stuff, but honestly, I didn't think that would be an issue. I thought if we put LS cam profiles and put them on Hemis, that it would work. It would work great. And the one that I did, the custom one that I did way back then on the stroker motor, the one that we ended up doing a turbo, made really good power. And not that it was ideal or anything. It's just that it was different than what the other ones that Comp was doing at the time. They only had 3 at the time that they were doing. And this one seemed to work out a little bit better. But the upshot of all this is that the nice thing is that now Hemis are enjoying cams from Brian Tooley Racing that are powerful cams, and then also other people have them too. And in fact, other people have had them for a probably longer period of time. I think the guys at Skog and Dickey, Texas Speed, you can look out at all the Hemi guys. And the nice thing for that is I would like to see the Hemi market get to be more popular than it is. I think it's a good engine family. I mean, like I said, it has really good cylinder heads. Right from the bottom of the barrel head is a really good cylinder head, and all the way up to the top of the Eagle Apache stuff. Those are even great cylinder heads. And then the intake manifolds, all the factory intake manifolds that I've tested on the Hemis have all been good. They've all been, LS kind of good. And then the dual runner stuff, even better because it's a dual runner manifold. So it's very, very cool. So I like all of that stuff. And I like to see now that that market is getting fed, the right kind of camshafts, and that there's not only just from one manufacturer, but the truck Norris cam probably should sell well for the Hemi guys, but by everybody else too. Because the more people that get in on the market, the more options that we all have for price and different kind of cam profiles and different manufacturers. Maybe people are closer to you. Maybe you have dealt with them in the past on your LS or LT, or maybe your buddy said, hey, look, these guys are good guys. Maybe you know a guy, whatever the reason is, as long as the more that are out there for us to choose from, just like with forced induction, we talked about it a long time. Oh, what's your favorite kind of forced induction? It's all of them. They're all good. And what makes it even better is that we get to choose from them. it would be bad if we only had one. If we had one that everybody thought was the best, okay, we're getting rid of everything else. That would be terrible. That's like having one engine that everybody gets to have. That would be horrible. We wouldn't get to run weird stuff, and that's what it's all about. Getting to choose that is very important. So I like the fact that, again, Hemi cams coming in. We want to see more Hemi stuff. I'd like to see more intakes. I have a Hemi intake video that will be coming up. Some testing has been done on the Hemi stuff. We ran the high ram and the factory intake manifolds and stuff, so we can see how all of that plays out. And I would like to see more of those also. We'd like to see the number of intake manifolds for Hemis that we have for LS motors, or that we had for 5-liter Ford motors. All of those, the more people jumping in and offering stuff, the more things that we get to choose from, the more cool stuff we have, the more we can individualize all of that stuff. But from the looks of it right now, Hemi, good heads, good intake manifold, and then there's lots of good cams available for now, so you can jump in and make lots of Hemi power. So we'll see what you guys got going on. Todd, what's going on? Yeah, you're on time. I'm not, unfortunately. About to start a blizzard. Modular power and Hemi power too, right? My knowledge of the new Hemi is I know it ticks like an LS, right? It has the same lifter tick. Speaking of modular power, I spoke with the guys at Holley today about running the V10 with the Holley. Looks like that can be done. Looks like on the V12 LS, I'm going to have to run it on something else. But I think we've got that solved, though. I installed, tuned BTR Stage 2 5.7 camshaft. It was kind of interesting. I have dyno and tuning logs. So did you have the before and then the after? Like how did it do? Are there any performance-oriented VVT cams for the LS family? Yes, there are. And I can't test them because I don't have the ability to run VVT on the engine dyno. But the guys from BTR can, because they have a computer that will run VVT. Brian was saying that the Gen 4 stuff doesn't respond to the VVT stuff nearly as well as the Gen 5 stuff does. But that doesn't mean it can't be good. But there are people that offer performance VVT cams. The problem is with the VVT cam, as you go up in the performance potential of the cam, you have to trade off the ability to advance and retard the cam, because unless you put extra piston to valve clearance in it. Otherwise, you have a limited amount of piston to valve clearance, and by swinging the cam, it gets closer and closer when you start adding duration primarily, but also to some extent, to a minor extent, lift. Michigan Motorsports yet again sent me the wrong rocker bolts. I ordered 6 points, not 12 points, and the 6 points cost more. I seriously consider Hemi if they made a fairly easily attainable aluminum block version. Do I need to put change my stock converter on a 5.3 if I put a stage 2 cam in? More than likely you do. The Mopar Hemi tick is either a bad lifter or the exhaust manifold leaking. Yeah, LSs do that too. Mine makes noise when I start it. I just wait, just let it warm up and wait till it goes away. I wonder how much piston to valve clearance we have on Hemi engines. I don't know. On a VVT motor, you'd have to measure it in a bunch of different spots. I remember going through something like that with guys that were running a Honda motor at Bonneville, and they're like, "Yeah, we put these big cams in, and we put." I think that they were running really high dome pistons in it. They were like, I want to say it was like 12-1. And I'm like, "Did you check piston to valve clearance on this? Does it fit?" And they're like, "Yeah, we did." And the first time that the motor went into VTEC on the chassis dyno, it bent all the valves. When they checked piston to valve, they checked piston to valve on the primary cam. I'm like, yeah, it's going to fit on the primary cam. That's not the one that we're worried about. We're worried about the big cam that has lots of duration. And they're like, oh, yeah. I said, yeah, when you check piston to valve clearance on a VTEC Honda, you've got to lock it onto the secondary cam if you're going to check it. They're like, yeah, that probably makes sense. I said, yeah, you probably had a mile of clearance on the primary cam because the primary cam in their case wasn't much bigger than a stock cam. I've been seeing a lot of Whipple superchargers being put on F-150 5-liter trucks, E85 conversion. Yeah, that would work good. The twin screw blowers make a lot of power, and on a 5-liter Coyote-ish truck engine, especially with E85, they love E85. That should work good. And any Gen 2 LT1 videos coming up? Not anything immediate. Although I still have one that I want to do, but I haven't. I don't think I even have any right now. Yeah, 300 blackout. If you have a stage 2 cam, you're gonna want a converter in it. Once the 5.7 is in, I'll have it degreed to the truck Norris cam and have a dyno pull stock for you. Okay, cool. How can I get you to help my project? Well, you're in the right place, right? So come here and ask questions. We'll all help you. What was the compression ratio of the Ford Racing 393? Which one? The factory one? When it came from Ford Racing way back in the day, that thing had some sort of GT40 head on it, GT40X head, if I remember right. I don't think the compression was very high. I think it was 10 or less. And does a Gen 3 Hemi have big bang potential? I already did that. I can't remember where I heard it, but I was told the Hemi lifter problems come from poor oiling of lobes at low RPM. I was told not to idle them. That's been something that's been going around the internet where they're talking about Hemi powered like police cars where they sit and idle for long periods of time. But I don't know if that's reality or not. Unfortunately, it was an MDS failure car, so no before comparison. Okay. Any Trophy 4 2.2 news? The Trophy 4-cylinder should be run. I'm hoping to run it the next time I go down. I want to run both Pontiacs the next time I go down. I want to run the torque storm on it. Do you think that the Hemi active intake would work with turbos, or would the pressure mess it up? I don't remember how the activation is. I don't imagine that it's well, it can't be vacuum because at wide open throttle, there's not going to be any vacuum. I'd have to look and see how the blade is oriented and stuff. The old 4 Racing with GT40X heads, yeah. Overcam does result in boost lag. That's true. We set new high temperature records all over the place here in Michigan. That's cool. It's nice to have some warm weather, I bet. If you're ever up this way, I have a complete high mileage L21 I can donate for testing purposes if you need one. The thing that I want to do is the L99 and LT1 swap. I want to build a 302 and a 305 or something out of those two. Need a 5.3 Pro Charger set up. Yep, Pro Chargers work good. We've run them on lots of LSs. Just because my friend, the Holly software, it saved my engine tonight. Did you get a little overzealous on it or something? Boost cut's a really good thing. But I mean, make 1500 on the stock block. I don't know that a Hemi will do that. I don't think it has the piston strength for that. I don't think it'll do what an LS does. It did over 1,000. I think it did near 1100 if I remember. Truck Norris camera, the VTR Red Hot cam. If you're asking a question like that, you need to give us more information. What are you trying to achieve? You know, is it a daily driver? All that stuff. We just need more information to give you the right cam advice. Have you run a Pro Charger or any small block Mopar? Only a Hemi, not on a 360 or anything. On a 5.3 turbo or Pro Charger, about 900 horsepower. Again, both of them will easily do that. The turbo will have definitely a different power curve than the Pro Charger will. The Pro Charger will have a rising boost curve because that's how a centrifugal blower works. A turbo won't have that. So it just depends on what you're looking for. Do you use a spark cut on the Holley software? We do put rev limiters on it. Usually they're set high enough to where we don't normally have to worry about that on the dyno, because the dyno, we set the RPM, the top RPM on the dyno, and not very often does the dyno slip. It has occasionally, but usually that's on the load end if we don't have the servo set right. Usually, and so that you just, snatch it back. But we do have rev limiter set on it. Interesting. I wouldn't have guessed the piston's a weak point. The block looks very stout, to be honest. The fragile Hemi pistons have been a known thing for a really long time. In fact, I think if anything, they were probably overly exaggerated because they don't have the crown thickness that an LS does. So the piston is not as strong. But what killed the early Hemis was not that. It was them not putting ring gap in it. And I've told people, time and time again on these things, put ring gap in it. And then the lack of tuning also is like, oh, we just add a boost to it. I'm like, yeah, but you can't just add boost to it. You have to add fuel to it and take away timing and take away temperature. And like, oh no, it just ran good for a little bit, then it broke. Yeah, that's what happens. Do you believe there are any potential gains going from a 235, 239 to a 235, 248 on an LS6 TEA, TFS head, and an LSXR? Yes, I suspect it will make more power at the very top. It might even be past the power peak. That has a 215 head. Okay. Yeah, maybe where you're going to gain power is on the after the horsepower peak. That's probably going to be after the horsepower peak. Have you ever done a video of what the day in the life of Richie looks like? My days are varied, though. It would be better to do a dyno day in the life when I'm down there at West Tech. Richard, I'm building a 5.3 to a C363 stroker and throwing 8 pounds of boost at it, debating on Elgin sloppy stage 2 and 3. Oh, you lost me there. What haven't you tested engine-wise? I tested a lot of stuff. But I haven't tested everything. I haven't tested the trophy 4-cylinder with boost, obviously. I haven't tested a V12 LS. I haven't tested the Pontiac with boost. There's a lot of stuff. Is there any way to make my MSD work with a factory EFI? Not that I know of. Have you done anything with VVT cams in the Gen 364? In the Hemis, Brian's getting ready to test some of that stuff. I haven't done anything with them because I don't have one of those motors. Hopefully there's a big bang on the calendar. The next big bang will be the 3800, probably. I know when the Hemis take sideshow donuts, by some really bad drivers that turn them 7,000 and never shift. Yeah, it's none of the factory intakes want to make power up that high. Load control for the famous 1,000 horsepower boosted 351. Yeah, that's not an RPM control thing though. That was me being dumb. Richard, why do you think race car communities obsess so much on elevation compared to temperatures? I don't know. I mean, maybe at the level, maybe at the highest level of racing that guys are looking at, they take that into consideration, and probably I would think more so with carburation than with fuel injection. Honestly, when we run, and I was talking to a guy about this at Bonneville, because they were talking about having to make lots of jet changes or making these changes for fueling when they go to Bonneville, and the DA at Bonneville can get pretty high. We've seen it in the 8,000 foot range. But when we ran it fuel injected, we ran the tune that we ran down at West Tech, and then we came up here, and it was still in the 11s, and we're not running closed loop, so it didn't seem like it was too far off. Have you run engines with ring gap with total seal dual ring setup with booster nitros? I haven't run total seal rings. Or if you mean gapless rings, I've run total seal rings before, but not gapless ones. Snake charmer by day. I did get to catch a snake, which was cool. Anyone have a good used cheap converter for non-LS 4L60 for sale? I saw a video of an M90 on what? M90 on the 5.7 Hemi. Yeah. Oxygen hypoxia obsessed. Yeah. I mean, they make more power. I mean, they make less power at altitude. There's no doubt about that. Have you done any de-stroked 427? What 427 would you de-stroke? Are there any Honda heads similar to the K20 in terms of flow? I don't think so. I don't think any of the J series stuff is near that. None of the B series stuff is like that. The S2000 head is that. The F series is like that. Or that F series is like that. Saw an Aussie video of an M90 on a 1UZ V8 Toyota. Cool. I haven't played with that one. I haven't run any of those on the engine dyno. The elevation plays a big part in timing. Denser cold air is leaner. It plays a big part in timing. We didn't run timing any different. 396 is a D-stroke 427. Doesn't a 396 and a 427 share the same stroke? They just have a different bore? Because the 396 is a small bore. I'm almost ready to get a tune for my LS swap. I found reputable remote tuner I'm going through. His website format suggests compression ratio before tuning. I did machine work, minus 4cc pistons, don't know. Your tuner shouldn't, I don't know why your tuner cares about the compression ratio. I can tell you that Eric and Ish, when they're tuning stuff, they don't need to know any of that. They honestly don't even care what the motor is. They don't care about the camshaft. They don't care about the injectors. They don't care about any of that. They can just tune it based on the number that they get on the air fuel curve, and then they start looking at timing, and then obviously you don't make it detonate. So none of that stuff is mandatory. Will you run all 5.7 Hemi tests with a variable runner length intake? You mean the dual runner factory intake manifold? We have done some of that testing on the latest generation Hemi. We've run those tests, and we've run other intake manifolds as well. Have you ever done an LS3 or 4.8 crank in a 427? In an LS, even like have I ever de-stroked an LS7? No, you should never ever do that. I did one in an LS3. Hellcat motor test? Yeah, I don't have Hellcat motor money. The 388s, I know Brian Tooley was running a lot of those and are running those in a class that they were doing. Mostly because they were limited in the turbo size that they could use. And it seemed to be that the smaller displacement motor with the limited turbo size turned out to be a better combination. You'll have Hellcat motor money when you start selling t-shirts. I have several people here that would buy t-shirts, right? Hellcat block is just an SUV block or something. Yeah, I don't know why he's requesting the compression ratio. I mean, I like having as much information as I can when I'm putting something on the dyno. But like I said, if you make the air fuel be the right air fuel, that's the thing that you would look at. Just need solid injector data. I don't have any, and I don't have any, nor do I ever even look at any injector data. But I'm also not tuning the factory ECU. I'm tuning a Holley, and we just make the air fuel what we want the air fuel to be. So I don't need any injector data. We don't have the map sensor. We do need to know what that is because we can select it. But honestly, I can select from and still make it work from a number of different ones in the Holley, and that's not too hard. Literally dozens of us will buy t-shirts. Okay, so maybe that will be the poll for tonight. Let's see. Okay, should the first t-shirt I sell be pinging is power? That's one of my favorite ones, but you guys can decide what you want. I'm very excited about the V12 LS stuff too. It looks like we're gonna have to run that at Brian Tooley Racing's place. James is probably going to do the tuning because they have a Haltech, and the Haltech will work with the 12-cylinder, and the Holley will not. Sell us shirts, don't buy a Hellcat engine, and just save the money. Yeah. Yeah, it's not even, Sean, it's not even close to 100%. It never is. The wrong cam. So let me know then. Let me know in the comments what should be the first shirt then. Should it be this? Should it be the wrong cam? The hashtag wrong cam. Should pinging his power is another good one. Let's make some noise was the one that I did. Lisa did all of these. Yeah, so should be shut up and take my money. Yeah, but I'm not doing it for the money though. So a drag van, the Hemi was too big to fit in the van. That's been one of the complaints about them, that they're top heavy. Like that was always Brule's thing about the modular Fords too. He's like, this is like a camera motor. I said, well, it's actually a lot like a camera motor. He said, but it's just so big and it's so small. It's a 4.6 or whatever, but it's so giant. You want this shirt? You want the wrong cam shirt? To boost or not to boost? Put a cool graphic on it. Like so you want a car or a twin turbo engine or something like that? I have a Holly Terminator X Max. I'm planning on running a few plug and play harnesses for my alternator, boost controller, flex fuel. Is there a limit how many things can be on a power tap? I don't know. Look and see how many inputs and outputs does that have? I don't know how many the Terminator X has. Wrong cam should be the first one. The Hellcat motor is a Hemi. It's a 6.2 Hemi. I think that's isn't the Hellcat a 6.2? Richard, if I have a small block Ford with a 4030 and a ring gap of 25, does the second ring get the same 25? That's the way that I do it. If I upgrade later to a torque storm, is 25 ring gap still good for 10 psi? Yes. 6 times 4 is 24. 25 is probably pretty good. We know you don't do it for the money, but sometimes you got to crowdsource for science. That's right. Science costs money. Every cam is a turbo cam. It's amazing how triggered a lot of people with that are. It's like the 400M thing. It's like the every cam is a turbo cam for all the other cam experts out there. What's the other one? Oh, the big block Pontiac. There's lots of them. V6 Pontiac G8. I want to upgrade and go V6 daily drive, but also Scat Pack Killer. I want 450ish wheel horsepower with 6,000 budget. Is that possible? I don't. You still want to keep the V6 in it? Super Richie. A bald head silhouette. I think a piston like a POW explosion for pinging. Yeah, it would do the pinging thing would have the ping thing shooting off somehow. What do forged piston tops look like after hard detonation? I'm trying to think back on some of the ones that we've hurt. They're not usually melted unless you have we have melted them. Well, no, that was a piece of the head that came out first. The piece of the head superheated, or a piece of the piston superheated and took a piece of the head out. Because I ran it at wide open throttle with the blower on it on my Mustang with either not enough fuel or too much timing, and it shot a hole out the side of the head. You want a Borg Warner resistance is futile, as long as it has a picture of 7 of 9. Need a camshaft recommendation for my Chevy V6 even fire motor with a 375 stroke billet, crankshaft, 4 draws, 10-to-1 pistons, Brodex V6 heads, looking to make 1,100 horsepower. So you're looking to make 1,100 horsepower with what kind of forced induction? And is this Chevy was it originally a 4.3? And what do the heads flow? And what intake are you using? And do you have 2 600 horsepower turbos for it, or a single 11 or 1,200 horsepower turbo for it? Yeah, 6.2 is a Hellcat one. I thought it was weird that they would make that displacement different than, like, why not just use a 6.4? I'm surprised you haven't trademarked wrong cam. I like the cartoon version of you. Oh, the little emoji one. If we want to see Hellcat engines and Godzillas, yeah, money. That would be money. That's for sure. I'd be interested in LS with Hemi head comparison. You would just want to see the flow rates of the different heads? I have heard and read that the TPI engines from the factory run a bit rich. How much of peak torque or horsepower gains would you expect gaining by just getting it tuned? I don't know. I don't know that that's actually the case. I know that they wouldn't be running them rich under closed loop, and I'm not sure why they would be under wide open throttle unless they were using that to suppress detonation. When I ran mine, ours was not rich because we had the ability to tune it. We had a standalone management system on it. What's going to be your car projects for 2024 racetracks? Bonneville will be for 2024. For a small block Chevy LT1. So is it a Gen 1 LT1 or a Gen 2 LT1? How much is too much LSA for tuning purposes for the fuel injection? There isn't such a thing as that. Are you tuning it with a factory fuel? Maybe I take that back. I want to rescind my comment. Are you tuning it with a factory fuel injection that has a mass air meter? Then it can be problematic. On a standalone management system, you can put whatever camshaft in there you want. There's a company that makes Hemi heads for the LS. Yeah, the one or two people that would put those on there is not, I wouldn't ever get those heads to put them on anything. I will, however, probably be testing some canted valve LS heads coming up that are new from Brian Tooley Racing, maybe on the 5.3. Ben, I don't think a K20 flows as much as like an LS3 head does. I'm converting to an 0411 factory ECU. Okay. About dual 340 air motive pumps. Website claims that they can make 950 wheel horsepower on E85. I'm shooting for 700. Should I have two pumps running at the same time or one kick in when necessary? Can you rely on that second one kicking on? And if you do that, you're also going to have to set up something that stops one back feeding the other one. That's not insurmountable, but it's something you'll have to do. Single 1350 horsepower turbo. It's a 4125 bore heads, flow 265 and 700 lift, 161 on the exhaust. Heads flow 262. I'd sure like to see a lot more head flow from making that, trying to make that kind of power with, if this is the V6 one, I'd like to see a lot more head flow, but they're probably just not available. Let's see. So if you're going to be near 400 horsepower NA, you might get more than that. I don't know what the compression is in the fuel that you're using or something, but let's even say that it's 450 or something. It's going to take a lot of boost to get to 1200 horsepower. And are you thinking that this is going to be a solid roller cam and this is going to be like a 7,500 RPM kind of thing? Only concerned about running both pumps at the same time, as I heard it heats up. Yeah, it would be nicer just to run one, since you spend way more time cruising than you do using both pumps. I actually had a switch on mine, a manual switch, but I made it so that the factory pump would flow through that pump, or flow around that pump. Actually, I think it. How are we doing that? Oh yeah, it would bypass that. Because I had a big Bosch external pump that we used to run on the Mustang back then, and then I would turn it on. Um, but it's better if you don't have to remember to do that. Because I like when I would go out to the Silver State and we'd get ready to go race or whatever, I would turn that on, or when I would go to the track or whatever I was doing, we would turn it on. Or when it was, somebody pulls up next to you, whatever, you got to reach down and flip the switch. I liked having lots of switches down there. I thought it was cool. I had switches for my electronic shocks and all kinds of weird stuff. Hit the nail on the head with the TPI and go standalone. I run mega squirts on both of mine, and the stock ECM is too much back and forth to get it tuned. It is a lot. I remember, and those probably would have been those are chips, right? So it would have been like tuning the old Honda stuff, the S100 stuff. So what we'd be running at the Salt Flats when I turned 50, I got to go out to the Salt Flats and got a rental car up to 100 for 2 miles down and back. Yeah, I let Lisa do that. She drove the Focus up to whatever the limiter was on the Focus. It was 100 and something. When installing a mild cam, can I also install new roller rockers and go from 1.5 to 1.7 Harlow and Sharps? Will that even work together? It's rebuilt 3.9. Yeah, you just have to make sure that nothing hits with the more rocker ratio. So you're changing the lift a pretty good amount, going from a 1.5 to a 1.7. So you have to make sure that the springs don't coil bind, and that also the retainer doesn't hit the seal. You have to make sure that you have enough clearance to make all that happen. How many wheelies have you popped? Lots of them on bikes. None on a car, I don't think. I'm trying to, no, because the super fast cars that I've driven have been on the street and they didn't hook up. And I don't remember driving anything at the track that would actually bring the tires up. Solid roller and 7,000 plus RPM. Yeah. So I'm thinking it's going to be. You said it was a 425 by 425 bore. What's the stroke on that? Well, it's going to be more than 3 inches, right? It's 3.5 or something. So I'm thinking 268, 272, something like that. 264, 272. And then I don't know what kind of lift you can get away with. I would make it 700 plus. What amount of power would you consider a built rear end diff truck is bagged? I don't know. I'm not the right guy to ask about that. I haven't done things where we have overstressed the rear end, because I don't really drag race that much. Richard, I text your number unless it's changed in the last few years. If you will email in a bit. Yeah, Overbell, here's my email address. And I have changed my number. I have a lowrider with hydraulics. I've been doing huge wheelies for decades. Cool. What's the difference between a truck Norris cam and a red hot cam? We went over that last night, but it's about 20 horsepower or 25 horsepower. Small block Ford Edelbrock roller cam, 520 lift, 1.6 rocker. Could I, or should I go to 1.65? You can. I don't know whether you should or not. I don't know what it's going to do. It would depend on a lot of other things, and it would just be a guess on my part as to whether you get any gain from that. Did you ever find a Chevelle? No, I haven't really actively been looking because I don't have the money for that right now. I didn't really do wheelies on my street bikes either. More on the smaller ones. My fourth gen will hang the fronts if I don't adjust the shocks correctly. It would be really hard for all of my front wheel drive cars to do wheelies. They would do back wheelies, though. You just have to put it in reverse. 4 9-inch, 500 horsepower, reliable, no mods. A 4 9-inch is really strong. And I always had the stock 8.8 in my Mustang and never had any problems with it. And we ran it at the track quite a few times. It did a lot of road racing, though. Yeah, the red hot cam makes more power than a truck Norris. It just makes it at a higher engine speed, and it loses power down low and gains power up top. Richard, on the Chevelle question, have you seen the new one being done by people who recently did the Trans Am builds from 6th gen Camaros? I haven't seen any of that. I just want a 70 to 72 big block, LS6 kind of thing, an SS. And I did my first 250 shot of nitrous. I broke the stock Dana 60 axle. Now the Dutchman 4130 axles. And I don't hit it over 200 now. Did wheelies on the 225 shot. Are you hitting that off the line? It doesn't look like if it were a modernized 70 Chevelle. Yeah, and all of that new stuff is that's just way too much money for me. Yeah, nothing like laying into the nitrous off the hit, right? So 60-40 on the pinging is power kind of thing. Yeah, 150,000. That's, even if it was 15,000, that would be too much. I would like to get ideally, I'd like to get a really pretty car that needs a motor. It could need a motor and trans too. I would be okay with that. A motor and trans, but just a motor would be good. Like it's something that has a small block in it, and then I could take that out. Something that has a wimpy small block in it, and then I can take that out and put something good in it. Like either I'm thinking big block, but maybe LS. I've always wanted a supercharged K24 Chevette. That would be awesome. Richard, do you plan on testing the truck Norris or hot rod cam on an LS3? They've run the hot rod cam on LS3s a lot. I don't know if I'd have to ask Brian to see if they ran a truck Norris on an LS3. I don't know if he did. But it will do the same thing. I mean, the cams work on any size motor. So you're looking for a nicely restored rolling chassis, just a nice looking car. It doesn't have to be. I don't want a numbers matching thing. I just want a driver. I just want something that's like red with black stripes, that that has a good rear end and stuff in it, and doesn't have to be a pro street thing or anything. Have you ever tried any other sort of racing? Bonneville and road racing. I've done a little bit of drag racing. Lemons, not Le Mans, but Le Mans is just road racing. I don't want to take away from it. It would be awesome to go there. But lots and lots of road racing. I saw a roller for 4,500, needed floor pans. See, I don't want any of that. I don't want to restore it, or I don't want to do any of that. I probably would get a manual trans, I think. How scarce are the GM 8.1s? I don't think that they're scarce. I think that they made a lot of those. I would like it to not be a Rust car. That would be better. I know I'm worried already that the Omni had to spend a year or more now, I guess, back in Ohio, although it wasn't driven on any of the salty roads. I don't have time to put into like getting a car like that back together. I would rather just save the money and spend it, and then have it already be done. I spent $2,000 on 9171 roller. Has rust to fix though, which is easy to repair. Yeah, I mean, it might be, it'd be fun to do welding. I just don't want the whole thing to be apart and having to nitpick every little tiny thing that has to go back into it. I'd rather just, like I said, if I could get one that somebody was tired of because the motor broke or it wasn't working and they got frustrated with it, that would be great. Nice baby blue Nova. I don't want a Nova. I had a Nova. I like them, but I don't like them as well as I like Chevelles. You get any low speed torque from good heads? It depends on what your definition of low speed is. It depends on where you're talking about for low speed. It's not hard to be impatient. It's easy to be impatient, right? Right now, all I want to do is, like, for this year, I concentrate on doing some bigger things, some more grand dyno tests. I want to get the Omni back. Want to run the V12. Want to run the 400. I want to get stuff done that I have already. I don't want to grab a bunch of different things. I have the 240Z, and I like to get that running. I have the Mustang. I like to get that running. Off idle cruising RPM. But that's not, see, when people ask me if it gains power, I think wide open throttle. So wide open throttle is not off idle. So are you talking about just tip in throttle response? That's not the same thing. I'm limited in parking space here too, where I'm at. There's not enough room for me to have a bunch of cars. I will already have too many if I get the Metro and get the Dodge back here, and so it would be tough. Yeah, that is a problem, Katie. Is that I can look through Marketplace and I can find 15 or 20 cars in just like a half an hour or whatever that I would just love to have. If you want power off idle, a Tesla Plaid, yep. Is a better oil pump a dead giveaway in getting a new camshaft? Are you asking if you should put a oil pump in when you get a new camshaft? We never do. AFR heads, 3-inch exhaust, single pattern cam versus dual pattern for the street. So there's no universal single pattern versus dual pattern thing. You if you want to know what cam profile works better, you have to look at individual profiles and not whether it's a single pattern or dual pattern. You could look at that as one that you would want to test and compare, but you need to be specific about the ones that you're testing and comparing. But you need to be more specific about what the thing is you're trying to achieve, and then you decide whether the thing is that the tool that you use to achieve that is helpful. And so if you have a combination that you want to put together or power that you want to make, you just tell us and we'll tell you how to achieve that. I just bought a 64 Impala. By the end of the week, I found the 63 SS 409 car I'm trying to buy now. A 409 would be cool too. I think that would be awesome. I like those too. Off idle, yeah. How much power does it make off idle? I don't know. I've never tried to be at 600 RPM, a wide open throttle. It doesn't really. The guy that did the V12 LS is the guy that I'm working with to go to Bonneville with the Metro. We are going to run that on the dyno. It'll be cool. wah. Special agent, you want a wrong cam shirt? Okay. Are you fairly knowledgeable on the 2-valve V10 Ford engines? Not specifically on those, but I have done probably more testing on modular Fords than most. And I did write a book on them, so I'm familiar with how they work, if that's what you're asking. Do you ever get out to the East Coast? Yeah, I come out to Kentucky, if that's you call that East Coast. I don't know where Matt Happel is. I don't know where Sloppy Mechanics area is. One more minute, so we're going to close out our pull at 57%. Yeah, I like Matt's stuff. They do good stuff over there. I'm near PA, Allentown. Yeah, I was back in Ohio. Is that close enough? I'd like to pick your brain about an engine build I'd like to do for a V10. Yeah, you can send me an email. This is a good place to ask because there will be a lot of other people. Is Admiral here? He would be all over V10 stuff or any modular Ford stuff. Tell me again about the V12. The V12 is a V12 LS. His dyno's in Allentown. Okay. I'm living here in Allentown. We're closing all the factories down. Is it Billy Joel? I think it is. What do we know about the V12 LS? It's a stock stroke crank, and I think that the blocks were 5.7. I have an excursion. I want to do turbo behind the Y pipe. That will work. Remote turbos are fine. You just got to get the oiling for the turbo back up to the motor. V12 will have ported heads, which it has on it already. The motor's already run. It's already been driving around. It'll have, we're putting a new intake setup on it. It will have, right now it has a LS6 camshaft in it, but a V12 version. And now it's getting a red hot V12 camshaft. How would you go about degrading a cam that the manufacturer doesn't give you all the cam specs on? I wouldn't. You had me at 800 horsepower NA. Maybe it might do that. We're thinking between 750 and 800. Yeah, we could run a bit of boost on it. The head gasket situation with that has me a little concerned because they're not MLS gaskets. But I want to run quad turbos on it just because it's super cool. That's what we're hoping for. I just want to hear it run. I just think it would be cool. No, not twin compound. It's bad enough that it has a turbo on it. Or will be enough that it has a turbo on it. And it'll be cool to get back there and see Brian and James and work with those guys. TPI engine, twin compound. I was going to ask why, but it doesn't really matter. Does a tune port motor needs a compound turbo setup? Like to see what it sounds like with the equal length headers. It has tri-wise on both sides of the, because it's essentially inline sixes on both sides. BTR doesn't give you all the information on the stage 4 cam, so I'm at a loss. I don't know what you're talking about. You should have enough information on the cam card to degree the cam in. Do you have a PO box where people send you stuff? No, not really. West Tech Performance is a good place for people to send stuff. What has to be done to convert to EFI if I build a turbo setup? The fuel pump lines, and you have to have big enough injectors to run E85. You want a Sasquatch on a racing tractor? I mean, that I love that, but that doesn't represent my channel very much. But maybe it will after the 24-hour live feed marathon, because we will talk about big feet. The V12 LS should make good torque too, I think. I would think. Are shooting for any records at Bonneville? Yeah, that's why I'm going. I mean, I haven't gone to Bonneville and not set records. Every time I've been there, we've set records. That's why we go. We go, and before we go, we do all of our homework to make sure that everything is, as much as you can, so that everything's going to work. I have already been through. I have pages and pages of gearing and all kinds of stuff. In fact, we just found out, and this may be something I should talk about on the next live feed. Chad and I were talking about, and he actually had a great idea. He's like, well, because we were talking about gearing, and I said, I want more gearing in the Honda, because we were talking about the Honda. And I said, I actually wanted more gearing, but I don't want to pay to have another gear set done. The way that they did it, I didn't like it. It made the shaft, the connection, it made it weakened because they machined it, and we didn't like how they did it. I mean, I'm sure they could do it differently, but we were looking at gearing, and he said, why don't you put a D series transmission on it? And I said, well, it won't bolt up. I said, maybe with some kind of adapter. And he said, well, have you ever looked to see if there's one available? I said, I have not. So we went and searched, and sure enough, there is an adapter to adapt a D series. I need to look now. I'm hoping that's not a B series transmission to a D series. I'm hoping it's a D series to a B series. I'm hoping that it goes that direction, because with a D series transmission, we can run a VX trans, and we have like 350 or 340 gears in that, so we can have all the speed that we want. Because I think I'm of the opinion that less RPM and more speed is the way to go. Because I was telling him that I wanted to run on the Civic. I wanted more gear so we could run a smaller tire, because we ran 26-inch tall tires, and those are gigantic, and they raise the car up and make it all frontal area dumb and stuff. And so I wanted to, we had to do that to get the gearing that I wanted, to run the RPM that I wanted, to run the mile an hour that I wanted. You got to calculate all that stuff. And then you calculate, okay, how much horsepower do I need to make that happen? Well, here, using this calculation, here's about how much you need. You add 50 or 100 on top of that number, so you have enough going in, and then you go out and hopefully do that. But I wasn't able to do that. But if I can put a D series Honda transmission on a B series, that will solve my problem. And on that note, it is time to go. But I'll be back tomorrow. You guys all have a good night. Torque is for drag racing, and horsepower is for salt flats. They're both linked. I'll see you tomorrow.